good. How you doing?
Excellent. Of course,
That's all right.
technology. In this particular case, obviously, your relationship with Geoff is very established. And I'd love to first just start with the idea of, well, I want to reach out to the guy from one of the guys from Asia and one of the guys that played in Yes, and you killed the radio star and all that.
Sure.
I get that you're in a certain circle where you can reach out and with your relationship with the other Buggle, obviously, it makes it easier. But
Yeah.
I just have to appreciate the idea that you're just going to reach out and communicate with somebody. If more people did that in the world, we'd have a lot less problems, I think.
Yeah. I've done that my entire career actually. I think that's what music's about. I don't want to do music in isolation. It's not as fun as doing it with people you dig, And so, well, first of all, I was involved with Trevor and the producers. We kind of conjured this idea up that we'd form a band, Trevor, myself, Steve Lipson, Nash Sohn, and Lol Cream from Godley and Cream. And the idea was we'd get out of the studio and we'd go and do some gigs again. Because, all of us at different stages obviously had done that previous to, where we were at that time, And the idea was just to get out and play again. And so, Trevor and I got close and sort of, friendship sort of developed. And he said, do you want to be a Buggle for the night? Because we're gonna reform for a charity show. And I said, yeah, of course. I mean, what fun. So that's where I met Geoff, and we just really clicked. And I've always done that. I mean, there's a couple of guests on the new album because it's a way of sort of creating a community. I always like to create communities, with music. Again, I just don't want to do it alone. It's not fun.
And on that note, I mean, it's almost, you guys were ahead of the curve because there's other groups or certainly pairs of writers that I can think of it. But you guys were ready for the pandemic because it was a file sharing situation where, okay, it's not like it's breaking up the flow of the band, so to speak.
Exactly.
So kind of tailor-made for that. But when it is a file sharing situation, whether you're next door to them, or you live down the street from them, or you're, across, on the other side of the world as you were, and you obviously, unless you have a schedule, all of a sudden your email dings and there's maybe one file or three files, or vice versa on Geoff's end. How does it work as far as feedback? Do you have communication in the emails, or is it literally a musical conversation where all of a sudden he'll open up something he sent you and you've added to it and vice versa? Or do they come with liner notes as far as what each of you would like to see? How does that communication work with Geoff on that level?
Oh yeah, we'll speak. I mean, we chat actually. Proper chatting on the phone, or there'll be email communication and notes.
Right.
That sounds really great. It's sounding good. What about if we did this in the middle? Blah blah blah. And so it just sort of goes on like that. It's kind of an unspoken thing that. I mean, he trusts me, and vice versa. He'll send me sometimes, a folder full of sort of little ideas, a chord progression or something, or a riff, and then maybe 6 months down the line when I'm ready, and there's not another project on the go or I'll finish something, I'll open it and go, okay, I'm ready to do this now. And we just kick the ball down the street like that, and it just kind of develops. I mean, this new album, it's actually a couple of years in sort of, in the making. It wasn't something that was overnight, or certainly not quick.
No.
Right. So it's not like there's any pressure, I mean, and sometimes I suppose it's like anything though, isn't it? Any kind of, art form, you have to know when it's finished and not overcook something.
Right.
And I think we have a sort of an instinct that, okay, that sounds good. That's it, mix it, put it down. So yeah, we talk,
So when I've talked to Geoff before on the even about the last Yes business, and where he's got a few things on the go, whether he's writing with John or for Yes or with DBA or by himself, he says when he comes up with it, he kind of figures which folder it's going in fairly early. With you, is that the same way, or do you just have kind of a it's a soup and then okay, we'll see who picks what up kind of thing when you're writing yourself?
Yeah, I think you can tell, there are certain things that, certain things would work for, for DBA. I mean, they're a bit more cinematic perhaps, and so that goes into that. So, I mean, I've got a few different sort of heads, if you like, I put that head on and I get myself immersed in, album world, and it's fantastic. But it's completely different to, say writing a song with somebody like Sia, for instance. That's a completely different head. Although they're similar. I have to like it, or it wouldn't get finished.
Well, it's still the same language.
Yeah,
still music in whichever form it takes, right?
exactly.
Obviously, if you're sitting in front of a Mellotron, it might lead itself more to something in the Geoff Downes world as opposed to what's going on with Britney or Beyonce today.
Yeah, perhaps, but I've used Mellotrons and Selenas and Fairlight sounds in all those artists as well, and they'll turn around to me and go, "Wow, that's great! I've never heard that before." So that's very a thrill in itself.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk to me about, as you said, this one's this new album's kind of a few years in the making, and I almost want to not guess, but did they come out of some of the same writing sessions as Halsey and Hims as far as initial ideas kind of thing? And then this is just kind of the second round of the finished ideas with a different.
Actually, yeah, but they came out of the writing. Some of them came out of the writing for Skyscraper Souls, believe it or not.
Wow.
They were way back then, even earlier, 2016, 17, when we were writing for that album, and it just wasn't, they weren't finished, or we had enough for that album, so it wasn't necessary to cram any more. That album was finished, and it was as it is. So it just turned out that those songs were kind of sitting on a hard drive, half finished, but we still liked them. It was just a case of when, and then they weren't right. Things like Clear Light, or those kind of things are a bit more rocky, I suppose you could say. I mean, the guitars, they weren't right for Halsey and Hims because that was taking on a very sort of acoustic, pastoral kind of sound. So everything had to sound like that, So it's just found its place years later. But yeah, some of the writing was around Skyscraper Souls, believe it or not.
Well, and this one, I mean, again, you're five projects in kind of thing. What started as kind of a duo. I mean, it for lack of a better word, again, forgetting the COVID and the distancing that comes with this, it's a proper band now. I mean, okay, you're going to bring in a guitarist, you've got some vocals, and spoken word business that isn't yourself kind of thing, and other players as well. It's almost time when are the live dates kind of thing, because you've got the whole stew there cooking now, right?
Absolutely, and we've also got quite a lot of material to play live. I always sort of think it's a bit like not musically necessarily, but in some ways it reminds me of Kate Bush and her attitude towards live, in that she waited 30 years to have loads of material, and then she did those 15 shows at Hammersmith Odeon or whatever. And I think if the timing is right, because obviously we have to wait in line for Yes, who are like the touring machine that they are, and they're on tour at the moment, or about to go on tour. So we have to sort of wait for the right moment. And it has to be done right, because I think we care so much about the records and the artwork and everything. It's more than a labor of love, to get those right. That to just do some quick gigs just because people want us to play live wouldn't be right. We want to sort of treat it like, okay, if we're going to do it, let's try and do it properly. And I hope that happens. There's definitely talk. I mean, we're talking about it a lot.
Well, and I mean, especially the last three, it really is, like you say, a complete package, right? With the art reflecting music, and vice versa. Just going back to Halcyon for a second, whose idea was it to throw the Kingfisher on the front of the album there?
Rogers.
It was Rogers. Okay, I didn't know if it was coming from one of you guys or.
Oh no, he's fantastic. I mean, we had the time, and he then goes into this whole like, what does Halcyon mean? And the whole thing. He's fantastic. It's the same with Celestial Songs. Gave him the title, and I played him 5 songs, and he's like, okay, leave it with me. And then you get that, and it's like, oh yes, it's fantastic. So yeah, Rogers' brain is great.
So on the new album, talk to me about, the running order. Is that kind of, I mean, I get it's not a concept album, but obviously every album, whether it's a collection of singles like the Beatles, still has a running order that makes sense over ones that don't. How did you choose the running order here? And were there songs left off kind of thing that are, again, sitting on that hard drive, for 6 kind of thing?
I don't think there are any songs sitting on the hard drive, actually, although we've written an entire new album's worth of material that came quite soon after this was finished. So the writing carried on, because we were kind of into what we were doing. and we were pleased with the results of this album. But the running order is really important to me, and it's just what feels right. I mean, I'd listen and listen and listen, drive myself to despair sometimes. And I'll sort of wake up at 3 in the morning and go, that's in the wrong order, you know. And obviously things like Beyond the Stars had to be at the end, you know, that's a given. And the opening as well, a couple of people have said to me, interesting that you open with a mid-tempo kind of, you know, sort of slowish song, but it just felt right. It felt right to sort of ease the listener into an album of songs rather than just sort of, you know, bang you over the head with an obvious one. Yeah. So, and I always liked English Settlement by XTC and the opening to that, which the Colin Moulding song Runaways opens up with these sort of shimmering guitars and they get louder and louder and then boom, and we're into the album. So it's kind of like that, you know, things that I remembered loving as a sort of listener. But then, you know, as time goes by, it becomes clear where things should be placed. And the album running order has always been really important to me. It's a thrill in itself, you know. You've got all the mixes, and then you can kind of have fun with where they fit, like a live show in a way.
Yeah, and that would be a different, unless you're kind of playing the album in order, like Yes does sometimes. That would be a different kettle of fish and a different set list as well, right?
It would, yeah. Although, you know, I talked recently to somebody about how Yes doing the album series, and I think Sparks did albums per night, and a couple of other people have done it. And I think it's a great concept. I love as time goes by and these albums that we cherish become more and more special to us. You know, the idea of going to see them performed in their entirety is a fantastic idea. So, you know, in some ways, it would be a shame to muddle up the running order of these last 3 albums. But I don't know how feasible it would be to, you know, perform them as albums. Perhaps we're not in that kind of, you know, position to dictate that. But, you know, that would be the ideal.
So what brought you back? I mean, I understand what brought you to LA, you know, to begin with a decade ago and change. What brought you back to the UK as far as, you know, living there these days?
I don't know. You know, you just have a feeling, don't you? It was the same feeling that I had when I moved out to the States. I thought it would be good to do. And then the idea of just remaining in Los Angeles for another 10 years just seemed like, no, I don't want to do that. You know, I can go back. In fact, I'm going back the beginning of October, you know, so it's not like I'm not there. I just don't live there, you know, and I quite like the idea of you just being back around the sort of musical sensibilities that are very much part of, you know, what makes me tick. You know, I like a lot of British music, so it was quite nice to just immerse myself back into that again.
So do you think now that you're, you know, again, not living down the street, but certainly closer to Geoff as far as proximity and the ability, you know, again, to meet face to face, do you think that'll change the dynamic of DBA in any way, or do you think it'll just keep on trucking the way, you know, as far as the working pedigree goes?
Well, I mean, we did a photo session, which, you know, has never been easy before. It was always a nightmare to do, you know, and then some of the sort of rock magazines would say, well, we want a photo of you together, and I'd be in LA and he'd be here.
Yeah.
And we'd say, well, we can't do it. And then we wouldn't get the feature in the magazine because they wanted a shot of us together. So that's been easier. Like I went down to his studio a few months ago and we did the photos that everyone's seen, and just stuff like that's been easier, you know, and actually this kind of stuff, you know, chatting to people and just doing a bit of promotion, that's been easier as well. We've been able to get through a lot more than the, you know, in the past, because just time kind of difference. So yeah, some of it has made it easier. I mean, he came around for lunch, you know, not so long ago, you know, and then we could chat about, oh, by the way, let me have a word with you about that song, you know, whatever, you know, we can kind of, it's easier.
Very good. So talk to me on the new album. You know, obviously you're writing a bulk, or at least penning most of the lyrics as far as where they're coming from inspiration wise.
Yeah.
How do you go about your lyric writing? Is it a case of as you're writing the tune or hearing it come together with Geoff, you've already got a melody in your head, or do you kind of wait for the music to be finished and then start scatting over the music? How do you generate lyrics, so to speak?
So now they sort of start quite quickly. Then the music's, you know, like if it starts from a germ of an idea, I don't finish the track in all its sort of glory, 5 minutes of it, and then start writing the lyrics. The lyrics formed quite early on,
Right.
with the initial spark of inspiration, if you like. So, and sometimes the sort of sound of things, or the whether it's nostalgic or melancholy or whatever, dictates the lyric, and it just sort of happens like that. So it's a big kind of like explosion of creativity when we get into it. And I'll just sort of, sit here and and they just come out. You have
So,
to get yourself in the frame of mind.
so what are your favorite, if you had to pick? I get they're like children, but obviously you've got more tracks than you've got kids. What's your favorite? A couple standout tracks for you on the new album?
I mean, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Let me have a look. I've got it here.
Yep.
Let's
Oh,
have
very
a
nice.
look. Yeah. I think I think Beyond the Stars is very, very yours. I like Heart Shaped Hole because it's kind of a bit of a sort of mini epic, if you like. And Keep On Moving, I think, is an uplifting track, and they're all quite sort of guitar-y and a bit different to the last album, those three songs. I
Yeah,
like
more
them for that.
almost. Again, I want to bring it back to Geoff, but a little more Asia sounding than certainly the last collection as well.
Right.
Um, on Darker Side of Fame, when you say Lennon or Elaine, who's the Lane as far as the reference?
Not Denny, Ronnie
Ronnie
Lane.
Lane. Okay, well, I wasn't sure. I thought when I first heard it, I thought you were singing Lake, and I thought, holy cow, does it mean Greg Lake? But then, okay, it's clearly Lane, right? And I didn't just
Yeah, Ronnie Lane, because
Ronnie Lane.
he was
Okay.
fantastic. I loved him, and he died in really tragic circumstances, and not a way he should have gone. And really, he's kind of largely forgotten, which is a tragedy. And of course, we all know what happened to John Lennon, for goodness sake.
Yes.
And I don't think I'll ever get over that. It's just so terrible. But yeah, so it's kind of, yeah, it is a dark song, with a nice melody, but it is about the cautionary tale of the people people we grew up with, and the way it ended for them. It shouldn't have. And so, yeah, Ronnie Lane's, he was a great artist, great writer.
And do I hear Geoff singing harmony on that one?
No, it's all the harmonies are me, but
It's you.
there's
Okay, somebody just there's a tone in there that okay, maybe that's him throwing some backing in there.
no, that's actually Mark Arman's duetting on that
Oh, okay.
song. So his voice is, yeah, I mean, very distinctive. And of course, he was on the last album and on the one before. So he's kind of become like the, as Mark would say, I'm almost like the invisible third member. And he's great. He really wants to be part of it, and it's really nice. Have that sort of like we were saying earlier on. That kind of community of spirit, if you like.
Nope, absolutely. So, again, what do you? I mean, obviously, as far as DBA, it is not a touring project. It is an album and a writing piece of business. But what are you up to into the fall? Again, when you're not doing this, or finding yourself in the studio working. What does Chris
Yeah.
Braide do when he's not working, so to speak?
Well, at the moment, I'm always working on something. I'm rehearsing for a show with Mark Armand, actually a solo show, which is just piano, two vocals, in London in November, and I'm working on a movie in Los Angeles with my manager out there. My manager's still in Los Angeles, so I'm doing a lot of film stuff, which
Like
is great
score,
because
like score and stuff.
score, but also songs and song
Okay.
placement, and a million edits. I mean, because anyone who does
Yep.
music for film,
Yep.
as you probably know, will attest to that. But there are many edits, and you think, okay, well that's it, and they go, no, we want a 2 minute 15
Yep.
version.
Yeah.
So I'm in
We've
that
cut.
world at the
We've cut the scene. We gotta
yeah,
taste
exactly.
the tune. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's fun, I don't mind doing edits because it's kind of how I approach production in general, but especially for DBA projects. They're very much like movie soundtracks in a way that I'll chip them away until they fit and work. Some of the versions on the hard drive are maybe shorter, or longer, in fact, and it's like just trying to make them so they don't overstay their welcome, or they don't leave too soon, if you know what I mean.
Well,
So it's similar.
absolutely. And again, much like working with everybody else, everybody brings a different tool that you can add to your toolkit as well,
Well,
right? And then,
well, absolutely. I mean, Dave Bainbridge is an amazing player. So sometimes he will play something. I think, well, that's got to be longer because he's just played it as a little lick,
yeah,
and or the beginning of Will to Power, it starts off with a bass line, which our bass player Andy Hodge played right at the end of the song, and almost on the fade out because he's just jamming and he's like
right.
a bit bored of playing those two chords, and he starts playing that riff, and I heard it and I thought that is fantastic. So I just chopped it up and just put it everywhere, and he's like, "Oh, you liked it," And that's the great thing about working with other musicians who are really good. They bring something kind of magical, which is just much more fun than, even though it was great, Geoff and I just doing our sort of first albums or whatever as a duo, if you like,
Yep.
programming drum machines and all that kind of stuff. But it's much more fun now.
Well, and I get there's a bit of an age gap between yourself and Geoff, but you and I are from the same era where we're talking about cutting it up, and we are talking about drawing a picture, like very much on this probably the same machines we're talking to each other now in some cases.
Yeah.
But you're old enough to remember where when you'd say we're going to take that little outro that you did and cut it up. That means a tape edit, and then
The whole day
we got to loop it. And we got to, it's not just, okay, we're going to hear this in 5 minutes. It's no, we're going to go out for dinner while the engineer does this.
Absolutely. I remember
and
very well.
how much has that immediacy, and I don't mean the technology with the internet as far as, well, I guess file sharing and sending stuff around the world, but, just literally that technology when it relates to the craft of song and the immediacy of the writing,
it's
nothing but a positive, I'd say.
Yeah, it's really so fantastic. And it means that I can engineer all of it pretty much myself. Although some bits were done at Psalm Music Village in central London with an engineer I use sometimes. But essentially, I engineered the whole thing because I can just do it. It's not like I've got to get a 2-inch tape and splice it. All that kind of stuff. Or line up a tape machine, any of that, which we used to have to do 20 odd years ago, whatever. So it's just made it, the immediacy is just absolutely fantastic. And also you can have total recall, which also wasn't possible back then. You come in the next day and you go, well, I took a photo of the desk, but it doesn't sound the same, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Or like I could think of, again, of just bands of Geoff's era where they're jamming or even writing to a cassette, and then they have to fast forward and find the bit in the cassette to oh, okay, now we're going to relearn it to record it, right? And
then you've got to sort of replay it and try and capture the magic, you had on your demo and that kind of stuff. Whereas essentially demos aren't really demos anymore. They're sort of the beginnings of the record, aren't they?
Yeah, because you can
it's great.
You can throw it in and then play on top of anything, right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, obviously, Skyscraper Souls, Halcyon Hymns, Celestial Songs. It's alliteration time. What's the next one? Is it going to be Sunday Psalms, or what's the scoop?
No, actually, I was talking to DBA's manager the other day, and I was saying maybe it's time to break away from alliteration after this, because it feels like the sort of 3 albums fit nicely together. They sort of are. Sure. There's the blue one, the green one, and the multicolored one, and it kind of, it's nice. So I don't know, you want to avoid parody. If we did Sunday Psalms, people might go, right, okay.
Well, I guess it depends on the music, right? I mean, if you're
yeah, but you never know. I might use the title.
Oh, there we go. Nothing wrong with that. No, I mean, and it comes out next week. It's exciting for everybody to catch it, and whether they're picking it up on old school vinyl or just listening to it on the YouTube links in 2023. Every listen's a good one.
Very nice on vinyl with Roger's beautiful artwork.
That's how you appreciate the artwork, where it's not just the white album or the black album, or okay, we don't need the artwork. That's worth the purchase alone.
Absolutely. I mean, his artwork is so tremendous, but it was made for that format, wasn't it? I mean, it was.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, it folds out and it's a record.
Yes. Yeah. You can play it. There's stuff on it.
It's like a big CD. Yes.
Exactly.
Excellent. Thank you for the time today, Chris. And
pleasure.
Enjoy the week. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll be in touch as more of the singles come out and the record drops. And we're watching the videos that Roger painted right now, if you're catching it kind of in real time here. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.